Welcome back for another episode of RBP. I am Ross Bolen here today without a co-host for a long-awaited interview with one of the Barstool Sports OGs, Kevin Clancy, otherwise known as KFC Barstool, one of the few people on the internet that I know for a fact has seen even more shit than me. It's going to be an interesting one. On Monday's show, by the way, for those of you who haven't had the chance to listen, we took a deep dive into OnlyFans as a platform with two models as our guests who turned to OnlyFans when the pandemic rocked their industries. OnlyFans is obviously a massively popular platform at this point. Hundreds of millions of dollars are being circulated through it, and we all need to be bonked and thrown in horny jail. So listen to Monday's episode 390 of the Ross Bolen podcast for a discussion around the psychology, sexuality, and shaming of OnlyFans with models Mercedes Terrell and Jade Bryce. Today's episode of RBP is brought to you by Felix Gray. Felix Gray glasses are the best. We're all stuck on screens all day, every day, our computer screens, our phone screens. We got to use Zoom and FaceTime to stay in touch with our families and get our jobs done, and we need protection from the blue light that these screens emit. Blue light glasses are the way to go, and Felix Grays are the best in the blue light glasses realm. They filter 15 times more blue light from screens than any other clear blue light lenses to help restore your balance. Their original optical lenses relieve most eye strain symptoms from daily screen time. I've been wearing contacts and glasses since I was a little kid. I live in the allergy capital of the world. My eyes are screwed by the end of the day, and Felix Grays give me the relief I need. They're incredible. Their frames are hand-finished from Italian acetate, making them durable, lightweight, super comfortable. Their blue light lenses come standard, starting at $95. You can add your prescription at checkout starting at $145. And if you don't love your glasses from Felix Gray, in the first 30 days, their in-house customer service team will take care of exchanges and returns. No hassle, no questions asked. Finally, a pair of glasses designed for the 21st century. Just go to felixgrayglasses.com/RBP today to shop glasses that work as hard as you do. That's FELIXGRAY glasses.com/RBP. Free shipping, free exchanges, 30-day money-back guarantee, felixgrayglasses.com/RBP. By the way, I have the Faraday and the Nash frames if you would like to take a look at those. It's time for our first segment. Kevin! So we're going to have Kevin Clancy on the show now. I'm going to bring him in via Zoom call. He's obviously in New York City. I'm in Austin, Texas. And I was able to do his show, the Kevin Clancy Show, several weeks ago. He's otherwise known as KFC Barstool. And I've got a lot of questions for him, so let's bring him in now. Kevin, man, welcome to the show. This has been a long time coming, obviously.
The dynamic duo back once again, tag team champions of the world. Let's go.
Yeah, we are. This is part one in a 7-part interview series. That's how many questions I have for you. Like I said, on the Kevin Clancy Show several weeks ago, as you mentioned, the dynamic duo. People loved it, needed more. I've known who you are for like 10 years as a result of our sort of parallel careers, and we've probably never been within like 500 miles of each other.
Right, isn't that funny?
Is the magic of the internet, right? Like, dude, I know shit about you I 100% have no right knowing. That's our lives, though. Like, that's what you and me signed up for. So I kind of wanted to go through like your career, as it were. When was your first day at Barstool Sports?
Oh man. So before we even say that, I just want to let you know we got a guy here named Playboy Marty, who is he's from what, New Orleans? Yes. He's a New Orleans guy. And just yesterday he came up, he said, he was like, just by the way, I finally got around to listening to you and Ross. And he was like, down south, we got Ross and Total Frat Move like way before Barstool. So
right.
I knew him first, and then to see you guys come together. So it's wild how much how long lasting I think both like entities were. But my first day at Barstool, I think I explained it. I was an accountant, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm working at Deloitte, and I go through like the tryout process, the audition process. Dave says to me, Dave Portnoy goes, I can't decide between you and Keith. You guys can split the work, split the money, and you can keep your old job. So I'm all jacked up about that because now I get the double dip on the money. I don't have to tell my parents I'm bailing on this job that has benefits and a salary and all that. The first day, and this whole time I had been writing my own blog on the side. So I was used to doing my accounting work and then blogging on company time. I knew I do it on my lunch hour. I get in a little early. I stay a little late. So I've got a system and I'm doing it.
So how many people are at Barstool at that point, though? It's Dave and who?
So it was always Dave, and then he had guys to cover the different teams.
Okay.
So he had like Rear Admiral was writing about the Bruins. Jerry Thornton was writing about the Patriots. He had his buddy Manzo and Jamie Chisholm. So like Dave was the only full-time guy. Everyone else was kind of side writers.
Got it.
So at this point, the Barstool, as you know it, it's like 2, maybe 3. So, and I'm like the first new full-time hire. So this is the beginning of the growing into the Barstool that you guys know of being this like whole media entity. The first day I log on to like the dashboard to start blogging, the WordPress dashboard.
Yeah.
And my work filter catches it. So I had been reading Barstool no problem for months, for years, like 2 years at this point, even more. So I'm like, I got no problems on that front. It never even crossed my mind. All of a sudden, I'm like, all right, time to like write my first blog, professionally for Barstool. I go to like, the admin webpage, and it's just like, whoop, this site has been flagged, like you're blocked. And I was like, all right, that's
Uh-oh.
it. Like I gave it a shot. I really like did my best, and sorry, so I was ready to tell Dave, like, sorry, man, I'm not gonna be able to do this. And luckily, by the grace of God, Keith K. Marco was just a great guy about the whole thing. And he was like, if you email me all your blogs, I'll just cut and paste the words and the pictures and shit into the back end, and I'll publish it under your name. Which, he could have just said like, fuck it, this is my chance to, because he didn't have a second gig. He was just doing that part-time.
He could have just buried you.
A shark about it. He could have been like, I can double my money. I think he was also a little bit like, I don't know if I can carry like the full load myself yet. So I think he was happy to still partner up with me. But that was a real moment where I was about to be like, right, that didn't work. Back to
And
accounting.
what year was that?
That was 2009, August of 2009.
2009.
Yeah. So I started blogging for fun on my own website called For Sure Not in November. It was like 8 months. It wasn't even like a full year. I got called up to the big leagues, but I was in the minor leagues for like 8 months. And then August 2009 was when I started Barstool New York.
Dude, my minor leagues was SOHH.com. Do you know what that is?
SOHH.com. What was that?
It was a hip-hop website that I think still exists, and they had me blogging as their Houston representative, like under the name Residue.
Wow. Did you pick that?
With a Z. Yeah, I picked the name.
Residue.
Yeah, I picked it
like
based off a
MC
Young
name?
Jeezy
That
song.
was like your alter ego?
I guess, man. That was like my first experience in this internet world, though, and it was like 4 years before my opportunity with TFM and when I graduated from college and all that came together. But
What were you're just like reviewing music and talking about hip hop?
yeah, like any new albums that dropped, like, and it was right at the height of Houston hip hop, being like Paul Wall, Chameleonaire, Mike Jones, Slim Thug, all the dudes that actually made it to the national level, to the mainstream level, and it was an interesting several months. I think they paid me $500 a month, and I had a full-time gig.
That's what we were doing at Barstool for like city for sports specific writers and kind of like freelance contributors. It was like $400 or $500 a month at that point. So that seems about right, dude. That's a bold undertaking. Like,
oh, it was bizarre.
Writing hip hop, did people know you were like a
They didn't know I was like I was a 19-year-old white kid.
I mean,
like,
that if they knew that, no shot.
Would have never worked.
Ever getting a readership, right?
Ever. And like, don't get me wrong. Like, I didn't pretend I was black, but I certainly didn't telegraph it that I was white.
Not trying to let the people know the real deal. Yeah.
Yeah, no, bro. If I had put up a picture of me, nobody would have read the goddamn blogs.
If there's one thing I have learned, and I went through it again recently with the death of DMX, black folks do not like white people talking about hip hop. They do not care for our opinions.
No, they don't want to feel like you're a culture vulture, especially. No. Like if they can tell you're just talking about it to talk about it and you're not actually invested, that's
but there's also a big barrier, like like the automatic assumption is that you don't know what you're talking about. Where I was like, yo, listen to me. Like we can talk DMX all fucking day long. I know I don't look the part. I know it's, it's not supposed to resonate with me, but it does. But man, that is residue, right? I mean, that is kind of my, honestly, that would have been my dream at that point, to be writing for a hip hop site. So
it was my dream at that point. It was like, and it gave me the taste I needed of like writing for entertainment.
Yeah.
That eventually got me hooked on this altogether. So at the beginning, when you get in the door, how long from that first day to like you leaving your full-time gig and going full-time Barstool?
That was probably like 2 years and change. So like for a long time, I spent my days emailing K Marco my blogs while banging out these we called it agreed upon procedures that I would do for Deloitte. Man, there was this moment. So not to bore everyone with the details, but I was working on these these investments that were the cause of the 2009 recession. Like America collapsed because of like the work I was doing. This is one of those things, like I got this job, now there's LinkedIn and all these fucking ways to get jobs. Back then it was like monster.com,
Yes.
And I think I uploaded my resume and that was it. Like all of a sudden I got an email being like Deloitte and Touche wants an interview. And I was like, I looked up the position. I'm like, this says like 60 grand. Like, let's go. I had no idea what it was, no interest in it, but I'm like, let's interview. End up getting the job. No idea really what it is. I'm just like, I'll fucking figure it out like I always do. Like, I'll just, snake it till I make it. Like the first week, my mom's got like CNBC on and they're like, collateralized debt obligations are the downfall of America. And I was like, collateralized? Yep, that's what I do. That's what I'm working in. So I think I had, and what I came to learn was that like the work that, so like the work I did was I would tell these banks where to send the money.
Right.
To which investors. And I would fuck that up, Ross, on the regular. So I was like, oh my God, I am like half responsible for the downfall of America.
So the Big Short was mostly about you.
Yeah. So, and there was this one time there where, we would do all of our work for like a couple weeks. We'd work on this portfolio and we would put together these manila folders with all these papers signed off by this manager and that manager and this partner. And one day I walked into this door. I opened up this door that just like nobody really ever went in. I thought it was like a closet or whatever. And it was just stacks of the folders we worked on.
Right. And
I was like, we don't even send these to the people. Like, it was just like we did the work and we stuffed it in a closet.
That closet was the end result of all your hard work.
Yes. I felt like in Indiana Jones when they rolled a box into that warehouse and there's just all the evidence. And so I'm just like, oh, wait a minute. This means nothing. Like we're doing nothing here. So at that point, I felt a little less guilty about like stealing from these people. So for like 2+ years, I did both things. I did, I was Bruce Wayne and Batman. I was Walter White and Heisenberg. And then it just got to a point where I knew Barstool was steady enough.
Right.
And also we started another website. We started Barstool U, which was kind of more like exactly like Total Frat Move, where it was like recovering college life nationally. So my partner needed to work on that. I didn't have as much slack to work on New York. So it just got to the point where I couldn't juggle both. So I just waited until I got fired, dug my heels in, made them fire me, kept my benefits, got a little severance, and went and became a stock peddler. It was my greatest accomplishment ever at the age of like 25.
So what has it been like watching, that grow from like Portnoy's sort of garage-born pipe dream to $100 million company to like pen stock soaring over $100 a share?
I by nature am a pretty like prepare for the worst kind of guy.
Sure.
And so actually I think it kind of works. Like Portnoy was always like, I am gonna be famous. We're gonna be rich. This is going to be $1 billion company. There were times where we were still like a scrub ass company. And Dave was like, there are boardrooms all across America trying to be like us. And I was like, no, there are fucking not, dude. But it was probably somewhere in between. I think it was a healthy balance. Thank God he was right and I was wrong. Thank God the one calling the shots. Because a long time ago, I would have been like, this isn't gonna work. But
I know what you mean, though. I know what you mean.
Yeah, I just never, maybe it's because of the sports teams I root for, or just the like shitty luck I've had sometimes, where it's just like shit's gonna go wrong. So that
the Jets and the Mets have poisoned your mind, man.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. They really have. They made me into a horrible person. But that coupled with, it was a pretty slow. It was a steady, it wasn't like pow, all of a sudden we're the best,
Sure. Well, and people don't realize that about what y'all built is that, and I mean, I know Portnoy certainly harps on this with the brick by brick and the slinging newspapers door to door, and it cracks me the fuck up. But the reason I like that he includes that sort of bit is because it's not a bit at all. Like, bro, the year you said was, what did you say, fucking 2009?
That was when I started. He started in 2004. So
you're talking about a lot of years of build up and grind, and that hustle is very, very slow, and the day-to-day version of it is grueling. And a lot of different like iterations of Barstool. It's almost kind of like a rapper, where it's like, who's a good example? Like Mace was Murder Mace and in the streets and trying to do this Harlem shit, and then he changed to like Mace, the cool, relaxed guy, and like, so you go through these phases where, we started out just blogging about sports. And then all of a sudden we became a fucking EDM techno tour. We did rap concerts for colleges, college weekends. We became an EDM tour. Like, we've had all these different ways where we're just always kind of like, trying to survive. So I've seen it grow up, down. We've had moments where we were like ready to pack it in and be like, we're going to have to like, we would expand into other cities. And there was a point where we were like, we're going to have to like relegate, like Barstool Philly and Barstool Baltimore is going to have to kind of get cut. And luckily we never had to do that, but there were, it wasn't always just straight to the top. So it's to the moon, as you say. Oh God. If I hear that phrase to the moon, oh my God, I hate the moon at this point. I'm like, fuck the moon. I want to go past the moon. Let's just go to Mars. But it was, it's not like, I don't know. It just feels like it's work. And like, sometimes I look around, I'm like, wow, like we used to do this out of a fucking my kid's nursery, and now we're here. And it used to be 6 of us, and now it's like 200 of us. I definitely have those moments, but for the most part, a lot of time it's just like, I don't know. It's, what? When I first had a kid, I remember being afraid. This was one of my biggest fears. I was like, I'm not going to be able to carry these fucking things. They're heavy. I was like, I don't work out. I'm not strong. How am I going to carry these humans? Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the dads would tell me, they're like, well, it starts out, your kid's like 6 pounds, and then it grows so steadily that you just kind of get used to it. And you're like, next thing you know, I'm carrying like my 40-pound kids like on top of my head. That's kind of Barstool for me, where it's just like, what an analogy. Yeah, we grew like a baby, and I can still carry it. What a dad analogy you just dropped right there. And like, Barstool employs non-whites now, and even, how about as I call them, females and the minorities. People of vagina and women, females, girls. You let girls, but you know what? Even into the boys club, because we're just normal fucking humans. There was never a moment where we were like, wow, there are girls here. Right. Like, wow, we hired a black person. It was just like, oh, the new guy's black. The new girl, there's a new boss. She's a girl. Like, it just wasn't ever a big deal. Like, we're not oblivious to it. We understand, but there was never any moments of like, wow, we're changing and we're progressive and we're growing. It was just like, yeah, I don't know. Things are a little different now. And I mean, I think I have to say this, like at the beginning, like, look, internet companies in their infancy, like Barstool back in the day, which was being run by Portnoy, who's a white dude in Boston. Like that sort of internet community, especially back when we're talking about, was not really as much of a thing like in the black community as it was in the white community. Like, the white community was all the fuck over the internet and being dorks online long before. Blogging and yes, yeah, bro. Absolutely. Like that, it just lent itself way more. And obviously, because Dave was white and some of your first guys are white, like, of course the audience built and is aimed at a specific demographic, especially a lot of college kids. Like, Boston was the main hub. We know that's grow from there. Yeah, but then you grow from there. Yeah, it was like in the beginning, Feidelberg always says, he's like, we're different, but we're not. Like, so Dave is, like I said, he's the optimistic, cocky one who's the winner.
and I'm like the New York down. It was funny in the beginning. He was the Boston Jewish guy, and I was the New York Irish guy. Like we should have swapped, you know? So like we had these little traits about us that were different. But for the most part, as Fight says, like we talk loud, we talk fast, and we're always right. And that was like everybody, all the guys at Barstool were that way. And then you start to get a little, you know, our first Philly writer was Mo. And he was a black guy from Philly living in Brooklyn, like who just came with a different angle. And it was just like, oh, that's cool. Like we get a different perspective. That's it. That's all it was. There was never any, you know, there's nothing anything more than that. So hopefully that all continues.
Did it ever impact you, or does it impact you, like the attacks on the brand? Because obviously, you know, Barstool, and I'll reference, like it was a more controversial, I would say, outlet and brand at one point than it is now. As I would put it, it has grown up, right?
Yeah.
Same thing happened with us at Grand X with Total Frat Move. It was definitely way more immature in its earlier days than it was later on, as we grew as people and figured out how the internet was working and made changes that were necessary to make the brand safer, more inclusive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But for y'all, it's like that's been something that Dave in particular has found a way to weaponize, right? He sort of turns it on the media when these really bullshit narratives get drawn up. And then Nardini being hired obviously was a huge turning point for y'all, and being able to be like, look, assholes.
Yeah.
What is that like for you, though, the constant sort of attacks on this brand that you've spent, you know, your whole adult life cultivating?
There was a time where, and I'm still probably the most prone to still fight. Like a lot of people here subscribe to the idea of like, don't give the haters and the trolls the attention they're looking for. Just ignore it, stuff them out. And I'm kind of like, I don't know. I was raised like, you know, I remember my mom always was like, don't ever start a fight, but like, go ahead and finish one. If someone like throws the first punch, like punch back, and don't worry about what the principal says. Like, I got your back, sort of thing. So I'm always like, I don't care how little you are, if you don't have a following, I don't care what your motivations are, if you're doing it for attention. If you say some shit that strikes a chord with me and I want to respond, I'm gonna. But that being said, it's gotten to a point where I have learned on the internet, whether it's attacking Barstool, attacking me, or even just disagreeing with my content or whatever, the people who fuck with you already agree with you or don't need an explanation. And the people who don't, no explanation will ever sway them. Yeah. So you're literally wasting your time. You know, it's like even some of the shit that I like, the personal shit I've endured, where there are times where I want to write a fucking dissertation on why you should think differently about it. And I'm like, you know what? All my real fans already get it. And all those people are haters who aren't going to ever take it into consideration. So why even waste my time? So part of me definitely still likes to fight back, almost on behalf of what really fucking annoys me. If people want to say that like I'm misogynistic and it's on me and I'm an asshole and I'm racist and it's about my content, I'm like, whatever. What I don't like is when people say that any woman who works here is like effectively crossing the picket line.
It's somehow
like
a sellout.
Like if you're betraying your gender by working here. It's like, first of all, let them fucking decide where they want to work. And second of all, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So don't speak on a company that you don't really know or understand yet.
Right.
I don't like when people speak for the girls who work here. So that because I'm just like, fuck you, because that's lazy. And now you're coming at the girls who do take a risk and do kind of like, you know, like when Nardini signed up here, she like lost some friends. She lost some like coworkers and some like colleagues that were like, well, we can't associate with you anymore. It's like, man, y'all are some shitty friends and shitty people. Even if it was a bad place to work, like you're not gonna be friends with someone because of their career choices. Fuck you.
It's kind of like the QAnon thing, man. It's like you can't argue with these people. Like if they think what they think, there's just like beyond that, there's not much you can do. I'll tell you this. So like for me, over the course of my career at Grand X and doing the startup thing, and you know, we got 7 years in before we kind of fell apart. Y'all have obviously had much more long storied success. But I know for a fact that there have been moments.
By the way, let me just say, 7 years is no joke. You know,
was it?
There's not many that make it beyond a year, 2 years, you know, so 7 is right up there, man.
Yeah, it was nothing to shake your dick at, for sure. We did all right. But like, I do know this. I almost quit probably 6 or 7 times. For real. Like, I almost quit. Like, I was miserable, fucking hated it, wanted out, like, was just like, do I need to go get a goddamn normal job? Like, do I need to Benjamin Button my way back into the corporate world? And, like, my dad would talk me out of it every time, thank the fuck God. But how many times along the path, and especially early days of Barstool, did you come close to walking away?
I can't say that I ever came, like, I never like had something else lined up or took an interview or whatever, but I was always like, I never thought that we were going to get bought really. So I was like, this can't last forever. I can't be like 50. I can't be a 44-year-old guy living in Miami talking to 18-year-old TikTokers and keep doing this. Can I? Can that possibly work?
It turns out you can.
Apparently. But I was always a little concerned about that. So what I would do is I would like always be networking and meeting people. And like I met a guy from Bleacher Report and I was like, let me put that in my back pocket. I got to know the folks over at WFAN, which is like the big New York sports radio. So I would always be like, maybe that could be a place that I land at some point if this goes south. And I also started to think I was the podcast guy at Barstool.
Dave you had a ton of success with KFC Radio was the first podcast there, right?
Yeah. Yep. Which at that point, Dave didn't like believe in podcasts. He was like, he admits, he says like that was KFC's little like pet project of his, Right. And I don't know whether that was because he really didn't believe in like the medium and how it was going to work, or if it was just this inherent competition thing that we have at Barstool where he's just like, if KFC's doing it, it fucking sucks,
Hilariously, it was the opposite in my position, like where our CEO at the time, Madison, was like, you got to do a podcast. And just because he was saying that, because of our competition, me and him,
like,
I was like, oh yeah, go fuck yourself. There's no way I'll ever do a podcast. And then eventually I sort of saw the light and obviously went with it. But yeah, sort of the opposite. Weird.
Yeah, so he didn't really believe in that. So I was like, all right, I'm going to be the podcast guy. So I started to try to amass a little bit of a network that I was like, maybe this eventually goes south or I just break off and maybe I can run a podcast network. And they were all smaller. Like I got a Jets podcast in there and a Mets podcast. And I was trying to, bring some people in the mix like that. I think actually Jared's podcast, Jack Carrab is the Red Sox podcaster. His podcast was actually his first episode aired on my iTunes channel. I was trying to like build him up and then send him up. So I had the very early makings of what I thought would have been a podcast network. So that was all in my mind.
Today's episode of RBP is also brought to you by Talkspace. When you put your mental and emotional health first, especially in these uncertain times, it has the positive trickle-down effect of making everything else in your life better. Your relationships get stronger, your self-worth grows, and these are just a few of the reasons why working with a therapist to finally prioritize my mental health has truly changed my life for the better across the board. For those of you who know me well, I've been in therapy for 10 years now. Talkspace is one of the more helpful and useful tools I have found in my 10-year journey to getting to know myself better, be more comfortable with myself, and during the pandemic, which has turned all of our lives upside down, to get used to sort of this new normal without that new normal being stress and anxiety. Talking to a therapist is a great first step. It's a signal to yourself that you're ready to be the one in control of your life, and by seeking help, you're giving yourself a chance to heal and grow, to overcome the difficulties and uncertainties of this past year in particular. Life is hard, man. You got to balance work, home, relationships, and everything else. It's challenging. I wholeheartedly recommend Talkspace for therapy. You can sign up online and start therapy the same day as you sign up. You can text, video, or send voice messages to your licensed therapist, which is so convenient, so incredible. You can have virtual sessions from the comfort of your home. I can't tell you how nice that part is, to be able to contact them through video, text, or voice message at any given moment, 24/7. They let you send and receive unlimited messages with your dedicated therapist in the Talkspace platform all day, every day. And you can set goals with your therapist. They hold you accountable to make sure you're really progressing. It's amazing. And it's affordable. It's a fraction of the cost of in-person therapy. Instead of waiting for an appointment, you can send unlimited messages 24/7. They engage with you daily, 5 days a week. Their therapist network is incredible. Thousands of licensed therapists with experience in over 40 specialties, including depression, anxiety, substance abuse, trauma, anger management, relationship issues, food and eating, and so much more. As a listener of RBP, you get $100 off your first month with Talkspace. $100 off. All you have to do to match with a licensed therapist today is go to Talkspace.com. Make sure you enter the code RBP to support the show and support yourself when you get $100 off your first month and show your support for the Ross Bolen podcast at the same time. That's Talkspace.com, and the code is RBP. And what was it about the podcasting that drew you in? Like, why was that as a medium attractive to you?
You know what? My brother, who was my producer, was like, he's a big nerd, really. And he was always reading books and always like keeping up with internet trends, and was kind of just like podcasting's next, which is weird to say, because like Bill Simmons, and there were guys who podcasted like 20 years ago.
Yep.
But this was before like the boom where, man, I was listening to Rogan and Tom Segura talk the other day. They said there's 2 million podcasts.
Yeah. But like 2% of them have more than one episode.
Right. Yeah, which is, of course, there's only a few that matter. But to think of like, there's like 100 million like people in the country who like could have podcasts to begin with, like who are old enough, and there's 2 million. I mean, the numbers are just staggering. So
fucking COVID really screwed us there. I can't wait for that to whittle down.
Yes, God willing, man. God, like let it will. I feel like eventually it'll be like the only the ones that really are worth it are still standing.
I hope so.
But what he did, he came to me and he said, I wanted to do it, but I'm a co-host. And I was like, I'm not good enough to do like a solo thing yet, So he came to me and was like, how about we do, he had the idea to set up a Google Voice number where they could leave messages, and then we played the voicemails. So I effectively had like a call in, but it didn't have to be live, because again, that was technology we couldn't really set up easily either. So as soon as I had questions to riff off of, I was like, all right, let's go. Which is always, it's a very good balance with me and my brother, where he knows the ideas that I'm down with. He knows the ideas that I'm absolutely not down with, and I make it clear, and he stops pushing it. And then he knows there's the in-between where it's like, he likes it, but he needs to be pushed. So he would just remind me every like couple weeks, what do you think about a podcast? What do you think about a podcast? How about you do that audio thing? And eventually, once the Google Voice thing came out, it just set me on my way. But to answer your first question, every year, like on the 364th day, I'd kind of be like, man, fuck this. Like, Dave's being a dick and I'm underappreciated and he gets all the credit and blah, 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 blah. And he would give me a raise. And I'd be like, all right, cool. All right, I'm good. It was like, when you see in the factories where it's like, it's been 0 days since your last accident, like you erase it and set it back to 0. It was like that. It was like, okay, erase it, reset the clock, and I'll start building back up my hatred for this place. And then, start it all over. He was always fair with money. So
I can't tell you how much I identify with that, though, bro. Like, that was the same exact cycle I went through. The same exact cycle. Every single year, I would build up the level of hatred I had for my workplace and, like, my colleagues and my boss. And, like, then a point would come where they were like, and here's more money or this good news that makes you reset the clock. And then I would just go back to doing my shit. And then again, at some point, I would come back to being like, I fucking hate it here. It's just hilarious how that works.
I would imagine that's what all workplaces are, I would hope. And that's where people say like money isn't the answer or whatever. It's like, well, it kind of is.
In some ways, it certainly is. So at what point you said, like, you knew early on doing KFC radio, doing all the voicemails, you were going to need a co-host. And then obviously after hundreds and hundreds of episodes, you got to a place where you're more than comfortable handling your own show. So when did you decide that the Kevin Clancy show needed to happen, and sort of what was your motivation for that one as an angle?
So we were doing KFC radio, which was like, at that point, it was me, Big Cat Feidelberg, which I will say to this day, I still think was the funniest. If we could have kept that going, no shade to PMT. Obviously, it's the biggest, most successful podcast we have and one of the best in the world. It was for sure the right move. But I think had the three of us continued to do it, I think that would have been one of the funniest shows out there. And really, what that show should have been called, I think that should have just been called like the Barstool Sports Podcast.
Right.
Because that was all encompassing. We talked about sports, chicks, pop culture, hypotheticals, nostalgia, all that shit. But I don't think, like I said, Dave wasn't like on board with it. So I don't think he ever would have let me use like the name. But,
right.
I think KFC Radio is the worst podcast name in the history of existence. I think it makes no sense. I think it confuses people. People still ask me if it's about chicken. People ask me, why is the podcast called radio? And why is the radio show not, it was awful. But in my head, it was like the letters, like the call letters, WFAN, and like WXYZ. And I was going to be like KFC. So it made sense at the time. And I also was just like, I don't know where this is going to go. I wish in hindsight, I could have named it literally anything else in the world.
It's your initials though, right?
Yeah, it's my initials, but my initials are stupid and confusing. So,
What's the F stand for?
Fuck it. People, I have friends of mine. Like there were listeners who thought that I was calling myself Kevin fucking Clancy. And I would tell my friends, I'd be like, can you believe these asshole commenters who thought that I was walking around calling myself Kevin fucking Clancy? And I had like close friends who were like, oh, that's what I thought it was too.
Oh,
like,
dude, I'm a self-declared like douchebag on a lot of levels, but sometimes it still amazes me just how much of a douchebag some people think I am.
Yes. Yeah. Like, give me a fucking modicum of respect here, please. No, Seriously. It's just Francis. My grandfather's name was Francis. So Kevin Francis Clancy.
God, you are Irish as fuck.
And that was, yeah. I'm a real big Italian guy. That was, that only came about because I needed, you were Residue, right? I initially was, there was one dude I worked with who called me the Colonel just because of KFC. And he was like, yeah, what up, Colonel? And I needed to write under a pen name because I didn't want people at work to find out. Yep. So even though it was a guy at work that gave me the nickname Colonel, I figured, no, that's only one dude. And Dave was Presidente. And I was like, I'll be Colonel, whatever. I didn't think that I was that. I was just like, yeah, at the bottom, my little byline will be like, by the Colonel. And Dave was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, that name sucks. And I was like, bro, you call yourself El Presidente. Like, how different is it really? And I was like, well, my initials are KFC. So then, lends itself to the Colonel. And he was like, just go by the initials instead. So that's why I did KFC. And
you want a weird tidbit?
Yeah.
At one point when we tried to launch, we did Total Sorority Move, right? We did TSM because we were trying to bring in the female audience. And initially we didn't have any females to write for that audience.
Right.
So guess who had to write under an anonymous name for the females, bro?
What was the name?
So not only did I have like 6 other names that I'm never going to say for TFM that were anonymous because everybody wrote under anonymous names at the beginning for the same reason. We didn't want any other potential future employers we didn't want to ruin our potential careers.
Right.
So on TSM, one of them was Sorostitute Sally and one of them was Snow White. And those are the only and that was supposed to be a cocaine joke. So those are the only 2 I will give out. But I'll just say that, like, especially back in the day, that the anonymity of the internet was like a fascinating and much more acceptable thing that now I think has sort of become like overtly toxic.
Yes.
That everybody knows is a problem.
Right. Right.
But it very much was the norm back in the day.
Yeah, Dave had one that was like Devilfish Dave because there was a poker player who went by the name like Devilfish Fish. He had other names that were just straight up like just I think normal, but he wanted to sound like there was a bunch of contributors to the page.
That's how we were.
Yeah. Keith wrote under Brick Noonan, who went to the University of Wisconsin. Like, just
I wrote under Blackball Bill at one point. Like,
that's it.
Because my first name is William.
What was it?
Blackball Bill.
I'll tell you what, WR is awesome.
Yeah, no, it felt nice to get that on a New York Times bestselling novel.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's some J.D. Salinger. That's some that cocky initials thing. That's why KFC doesn't work because it's initials, but it's fucking stupid. So you don't get quite the same like cachet. My what was writing like a chick like that?
Dude,
did you? I mean, that's
wasn't,
talent.
It wasn't great for the psyche. Just in general, it was like a weird psychological experience that took me several months of therapy to recover from.
Were you talking like sex and stuff? Would you be like,
hell no.
Dick.
No, it was more like we were just trying to put out some general, like pretty calm, tame, like girl-centric content so that we could get female contributors interested, right? Like I wasn't leaning into it or like trying to pretend necessarily that I knew any fucking thing about the sorority world.
Right.
It was more to just get general stuff out to see if we could get more women, more females involved with the brand for sort of the same reason y'all did. Because initially it was a very male-driven, male-centric brand, but there was obviously all this female interest, and of course, like on y'all's side, there are females who love sports and partying. On our side, there are females who love partying in college. Like that was, they needed access to the brand and the platform and to be a part of the community as well.
You say that you weren't like, doing anything special, but being able to write from other points, like I have 2 moments in my career as a writer, because unfortunately I don't blog much anymore, but I think my most impressive blogging and the shit I'm proudest of, 2 moments. One, I jumped on the Islanders bandwagon and pretended to be a hockey fan. But I didn't like, it was open. I told everyone I'm a bandwagon fan. I don't know the game very well. I'm just doing this because we need some hockey representation. John Tavares is good. The Islanders are good. Let me fuck around.
Right.
And I'm like, I got in, like, the team grew to know me. I met Tavares. I met the team. They wore my t-shirts. We made money off of it. And I was like, I'm fucking faking it, guys. Like, I built we had t-shirts that went viral for John Tavares because I was writing about the New York Islanders. Like, that to me was like true snake it till you make it. And then the best and worst day of my life blogging, the Yankees win the 2009 World Series. And I am a Mets Jets fan. And I would always hire these guys for the $400 or $500 a month to cover the teams I don't like. His name was Scott. That was it. His blogging name was just Scott. I was like, could you be a little more vanilla, bro? Like, you don't have to be the Colonel, but can you give me something more than Scott?
Scott.
So he is MIA that day. The day after they win the World Series, he's like, I got to go to work. I blogged the entire day. I must have put up 15 posts just dick sucking the Yankees and Mariano and Jeter and all the coverage of, like, look at this awesome video of this guy with 20 rings, 26 rings, and all this shit. And people loved it. Yankee fans were like, fuck you, KFC. Look, your site is owned by Scott today. And I was like, you dumb assholes, it's me. It's fucking me. But when you can do that kind of shit, that's when you're like seeing the Matrix, that's when you're pulling the puppet strings.
Yeah, it was one of the first moments for sure writing for the female site that I was like, okay, I could probably do this as myself at some point. I had some confidence at that point.
Hey, you know what's interesting?
So like,
just a quick side note about writing. Have you seen the movie Promising Young Woman?
Yes.
So the scenes when Bo Burnham is first hitting on the girl and getting in with her and it's working, I was thinking to myself, it's fascinating that whoever wrote that script, that dialogue, like, knew exactly what women want to hear and what would come off as cute and charming and cocky and all that. And I was like, it's all, it really is a game. Like, so they wrote it for a movie. That guy who wrote it could have gone and done it in real life, where it's like, if you want girls to like you or think that you're like, say this stuff, and you can just fucking write it that way. And then obviously it's very apropos knowing what happens in the end of that movie, where it can all be smoke and mirrors. But writing, you have a little bit of anonymity and you can kind of write whichever way you need, you want. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, the first time I ever wrote anonymously and, like, I guess I would say misrepresented myself on a level was back in the day when we had AOL chat rooms, and I figured out, like, I could swing and snake my way up into the lesbian chat rooms and then pretend to be a chick, and then
why do we all do that?
Why do we all do that? Would be talking to me, and it would be so hot, and, like, I'd just pretend to be one of them, but then it turns out every single person in there was a dude.
Do you think that me and you ever chatted pretending to be lesbians getting off to each other? Probably.
Kevin, it's entirely likely that we have had cyber sex at some point without even knowing it.
ASL, and I got Ross being like,
18
Sally,
LA.
16 in Austin or whatever. Oh my God. But that was such a weird thing because we weren't on the internet yet. We were starting on the internet. There was nowhere to go. Like, it's not like we hopped on a page somewhere that said, yo, you know what's cool? Like, go to this website, go to this chat room, pretend to be a lesbian. So that's where I got the idea. We all just inherently were like, let's pretend to be lesbians and let's pretend. And we didn't even know. I didn't know, like, what that meant, like going down on a girl, vaginas, like what? But we all just did it inherently. It's amazing.
It's fucking weird, man. It's so weird. As your career, like, I know you got shit to do today. I want to get through a few more of these questions.
I'm good.
You've gotten to meet a lot of people as a result of Barstool and your career, and now y'all's office has turned into a full-blown, like, celebrities are in and out every day, seemingly. Who is the person that was the most fun to meet that you've gotten to meet at this point? And I know what I mean by that is, like, I know there are people you probably got excited to meet and then you met them and you were like, oh, that was a bummer. who who lived up to the hype for you?
There's been some good ones.
I'll say
David Ortiz.
The Funk Flex interview on the Kevin Clancy show last week was fucking awesome.
That was a good one for recently because early on, you know, it's new, and anybody who's a little bit famous is like, wow. And so you're like, you love it. But now this deep in the game, it takes a lot to get to move the needle, really, you know? So that was just a couple weeks ago. And Flex, as a New York guy, I mean, I listened to Flex on High 97 like my whole life. And he debuted like some of my favorite songs. He had DMX and Cannabis and Noriega freestyling in his studio. Like I listened to that dude forever. And then he came in and he was asking me questions, telling me that he was learning shit like from me. I was like, wow, that is fucking wild. So Flex is a good recent one. David Ortiz. So the very first one was Pedro Martinez. Dave he was supposed to come to New York and he had a chance to sit down with Pedro for like half an hour or something. He calls me like the morning of and is like, I can't make it. And what is funny, because back then, at that point, I was like, wow, something like catastrophic must have gone wrong. And now knowing Dave, he probably woke up and was like, I just don't want to do this today. You know? Like who would have a chance to talk to Pedro? And it was probably Dave being like, I don't want to do it. You know? So with Pedro, I call out of work sick. I go interview Pedro. We did this thing where we just played a montage of his greatest highlights for him. And I was like, just tell us what was going through your mind. And let me tell you, that's a great way to get people, like he loved it. He was like, this is the best interview I've done all day. I'm like, I bet it is. We're just sucking your dick, dude. So Pedro was a great one. Ortiz, we did a home run derby with him. And I'm not a great at anything anymore athletic. So I think I barely hit it, like maybe a home run or two. And David Ortiz told me to take the bat out of my ass and start swinging like a man. And I was like, fuck yeah. Like, that's amazing, David. Good shit, Poppy. But there's been comics that have come through, like guys that I've become friends with, Chris DiStefano and the like, where I'm like, you're just like one of my boys now. Recently though, on Zoom, Bryan Cranston was a big one for me because that guy is like, you know, a god to me. And we started out, he was the first guy I was nervous for in a long time. Truly nervous. Like I'm always like, there's pressure to make an interview good. But sure. Bryan Cranston, I was like sweating and like, don't fuck this up. So I had told him that.
I couldn't even go into a Bryan Cranston interview probably sober, bro. I don't think I could handle that.
Right.
That's a lot of pressure. So
I just copped to that. I just told him, like, I got to be honest. You are like the man to me. And I am fucking, you know, and I started gushing. I was like, you're a great actor. And it seems like you're a great family man. And you are funny. But and he goes, would you just shut the fuck up, man? Just shut up. And I was like, yes, like now I'm relaxed. Now we're good to go. And I was like, even you doing that was cool. You're even, you know, whatever. But I think for my final answer, because I did get to meet him in person, is Rob McElhaney. He came in to promote Mythic Quests. Yeah. And me and Fights are both like monster, Always Sunny fans. And he came in and he knew what he was doing. I think he watched a couple clips of our show before we came in. So he just had one tidbit about me and one tidbit about John that was real. And I was like, oh my God, Rob, like listens to our show. And it was probably like his PR person told him one factoid or whatever, but he was so grateful. He dapped it up with us. He knew how much of a supporter we were. And like that one completely lived up to the hype. So, but I'm sure I'm leaving out some great ones. That's the answer for me.
Those are some good examples.
By the way, just to go back, because I never actually answered your question. And I hate sometimes on podcasts when people do that. And I'm like, fuck, I wanted that answer. You asked me about, doing the solo podcast. So KFC radio with the three of us was madness. We were playing these voicemails about like, would you rather suck a giraffe's dick or, you know, fuck a rat, whatever. And it was fun. And that's what we went that direction because of those voicemails. I said, talk about whatever you want. And much like the chat rooms, everybody's voicemails were just dumb, high questions, high thoughts. So I was like, all right, that's what the show's going to be. But I wanted to do a more traditional podcast where it was like, we're going to sit down and have discussions and talk about real things. So that's when I started the podcast. Initially, it was me and my brother. We called it Mail Time because the first half of my career was all about, because I came from the Cube life, I was like, I represented for the Cube Monkeys.
Right.
So Mail Time was all about mailing it in at work, grab an hour at your lunch break and come listen to two guys who made it out of the cubes. So that's where we started, just talking and opining and all that shit. And that eventually morphed into the Kevin Clancy show, which I just kind of rebranded this several months ago, only at this point. And that, that was kind of Mike Francesa was a solo guy. And I like Tim Dillon a lot, doing solo work. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going to go do it on my own. There was two things that fans liked about me: when I did deep dive interviews, not just those like 15-minute press hits,
right?
And when I did solo work. So I was like, that's what this show's going to be, like hour-long conversations with, a guy like you and me just ripping it solo. So that's my only, I'm doing it right now, where I just fucking babble. And I'm really good at filling air. That's my talent, I guess.
We have this in common.
That's why I started that show. But anyway.
Yeah. I identify with that on every single level. Filling air.
You're good at it too. There's very few of us who can, man. Not many.
Hey, you guys spend a lot of time talking to yourself to really become comfortable with that skill set.
You gotta be crazy.
Okay, let me ask you this. Has there anybody you met that you're willing to throw under the bus as a huge letdown? Like a celebrity that after the fact you were just like, okay, fuck that person.
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to dodge this question. I'm not going to dodge it because everybody dodges these questions, I will say there's many people who you can tell immediately when their press team or whatever you call it, PR team, sets it up and they're just like, you got to do this interview. And you can tell they're just going through the motions, which is fine. I don't, whatever. But one particularly, Matt Walsh from Veep and from Old School. And, I loved him. He's the guy in Old School, if you don't know him, where he's like, I fucking hate golf. I don't want to golf. I want in on your, and
the frat,
he just did not care for us, did not really like us, and was totally. And I was early enough in my career. I probably wasn't the best interviewer.
Sure.
But yeah, he was a little bit of a letdown. Oh, Action Bronson was that did not go well. Have you ever seen that footage? Have you ever seen that, Ross? Yes. It was something. Let me ask you this, because so you're a rap fan. You used to write for a hip hop site. I'm sure you're familiar with Action. I asked him about his beef with Raekwon,
right?
Or Ghostface, excuse me, Ghostface, and he fucking flipped, man. He was like, "I want to throw you through the fucking wall right now. I'm gonna smash you through a table," and I was like, I was apologetic. I was like, "That's not what I was trying to do. I want to, I tried to keep you going, and then I was like, very clearly, this is over. He hates me now." And a lot of his fans were kind of like, "That's Bush League that you would ask that question," and I was like, I asked him about his rap beef. I don't think that's crazy. Would you have like a steered clear of that?
No, dude. I don't want to talk to you if you can't talk to me about what I want to talk about. Like,
yeah. And I think if you're interviewing a rapper and he had one of the most intriguing, alluring things about rap to me is rap beef. He had one that was pretty prominent. It's also not one, like, I don't think he got like murdered where it was like super embarrassing. I feel like, and he even kind of cleared the air at one point, being like, I respect, and I did it in like a goofy way, doing it like KFC radio style. We had one question that was, if aliens came down, who would you send to meet them? And he was talking about, well, what if the aliens don't like you and fight you or whatever? I was like, oh, maybe like send Ghostface in, whatever. I just tried to weave it in a way that we kind of have our hypothetical banter.
Sure.
And he just
the fuck
snapped.
out.
And let me tell you, when Action tells you he wants to throw you through a wall, I was like, well, fuck, he could and might.
And I think this was before he lost 127 pounds. So like he was in full action. He was a big man.
He could do it to me right now. He could lose 327 pounds and he probably still beat my ass. But that, I'm cool with that though. You know what? I feel like the podcasting world lacks. The one thing that all podcasting lacks is a little bit of friction, a little bit of disagreement. Because think about it, you only have guests only go on shows that they want to be on, and hosts only, you got to like suck everybody's dick a little bit to keep, scratch my back, I scratch yours. I feel like radio used to be like, you got to go on your local radio show because you have to promote your topic. And maybe the hosts don't care you, and maybe there's going to be some fireworks. I interviewed Kathy Griffin, and me and Fights were not really fans of her and how she handled her shit. So we kind of were like, yo, you had to know when you did the whole thing with Donald Trump's head, like there was going to be problems.
Right.
And she, obviously she disagreed. It was the only time we ever had like some, fucking tense arguing. I wish there was more of that on podcasts.
Yeah, it's unfortunately a weird part of the game where it's like, you don't want to have your show, like, you don't want to bring on a guest and then fry them and then have every guest after the fact be like, well, if I come on a show, is he going to bring up like the worst fucking shit possible? Like, because nobody wants to talk about the worst fucking shit possible. Right. Which brings me to my next question. We both had the pleasure of going through very public divorces. It's just what happens with internet people, right?
Yep.
Like, there was no way in your case, if you were ever going to get a divorce, that it wasn't going to be public. There was no way in my case, if I was ever going to get a divorce, that it wasn't going to be public. It just adds this other layer of weird when you're like, it's not that we're like celebrities, but it's like we're internet people that have these fan bases, and it's just this different type of world. It's almost more personal than the celebrity culture that we have in the United States because it's more accessible and we're real people, not random multimillionaire actors or athletes or whatever. How did you get through that though? Like, how did you? I know it wasn't easy. And I know it's Ross, probably still something you work on.
Yeah, I didn't get through it. I'm hanging on by a thread, and I'm still fighting every single day. It was an ugly time where I was so blindsided by how much of a story it became. Like, again, I'm so I still am surprised by it, but I'm so I'm so like pessimistic and negative. Like, I never thought of myself as a big deal. I still don't. I don't even understand why anybody would have any interest in my personal life. Like, I can't believe it. And I certainly can't believe that like People Magazine and Daily Mail across the pond was picking it up, and it was getting traction and clicks. And like, I know Barstool always gets your attention, but I was like, you guys really care about like my sex life and it was different for me. There's several things that are different in my situation. One, I make a living off of busting other people's balls and talking about their personal life. So
sure,
you reap what you sow. Two, in my case, it was not like this leaked out and the media is the one exposing me, where you can kind of be like, man, fuck you, New York Post. Like, you're talking about my private shit. This was, unfortunately, my wife at the time, she was the one who put it out there. So there was, and a lot of salacious details. I mean, dude, that story spun so out of control. There were people who were saying I was in a hotel room while my kids were being born.
Right.
Like, come on, man. Like, I get it. It was certainly not a good move on my part, but some of the stories that spiraled out of control, where I was like, again, I would love to write a dissertation telling you the real deal, but you either hate my fucking guts and don't care, and you think that I'm a bad person because, my marriage fell apart and I stepped out, or you already ride with me and you know that marriage is difficult, and sometimes, you end up trapped in a spot that you wish you weren't. So, as far as getting through it, it's still a fucking absolute grind for me. I mean, I really can't believe that it still is every day, every fucking day, I still get
comments.
Every 1 minute man I post, top comment is, well, isn't this guy who cheated on his wife? Why are we listening to him? And I'm like, man, we're like going on 4 years, three and a half years now, where it's like, you ain't saying it about Rock. You're not saying it about every other person that went through it. And again, I know the difference is that usually it's never the wife actually speaking out. So there's a little bit of an X factor. But sometimes I look at what I really love? Well, I shouldn't say I love, because it's a sad situation all around.
Sure.
But I'll say something about a basketball player or something, and they're like, aren't you the guy who cheated on his wife? Like, you don't think that these athletes have stepped out on their marriages? Like, sometimes they pick people that are, oh, how about this? How about if I would criticize Donald Trump and people would be like, you cheated on your wife. I'm like, brother, your fucking idol did the same thing, you know? And I know it's not a like, let's compare game, but sometimes people make me feel like I'm the only person in the world who ever strayed from their marriage. I think that's bullshit.
Yeah, it's a tough fucking spot to be in, man, when you look, we put ourselves out there, you and I, in a way that's different than a lot of media personalities, where there's a level of, you know, sure, we're entertainers, but there's also a level of rawness and realness to our brands and to the way we represent ourselves. And when you go through something difficult on your personal life side and your professional life sort of runs with that and your fan base and the internet commenters and, bro, there's like Reddit threads about my shit that there's stuff in there that I didn't even know about.
Right.
Where I'm like, yo, this isn't even close to being anywhere near accurate. And the beauty of it is the worst part, the beautiful, most ugly part is that what you keep saying, you wish you could write a dissertation and just explain it, right? Dude, I can't tell you how many times in my career I wish I could have had that ability to like do the Dave Portnoy emergency press conference and just be like, look, fuckers, here's what happened. Let me explain every step of this to you so that you can never ask another question. Now leave me the fuck alone. But it doesn't work like that because, one, there's this little thing in our country called the legal system, which actually cares about shit like this when you have legal stuff involved in it. Two, it's none of your goddamn business. It's my fucking life, and I get to decide what I want to talk about. So it's like this weird thing with the fan culture where people think they have the right to ask you or make fun of you or put shit on you, and it just at this point I just fucking ignore it, and I feel lucky that I have like built up this filter to where literally there is nothing anybody can say to me on the internet that impacts me anymore. The only thing I care about is feedback relative to my performances. That's it. Anything else you're saying, I could give a fuck. But man, it's such a bizarre thing to deal with, balancing like that. You know, and this is the thing. You're friends with a lot of comics now. You're friends with a lot of comedians now. I'm obsessed with comedians, with stand-up comedy, with that world, in a similar way that you are, because comics have to deal with this more than anybody. Balancing what they're putting on stage with their real life and their family and their kids and their, you know what I mean? And it's like handling that in and of itself is the part of this job that people don't get. Just like they don't get with professional athletes, the part of their job they don't get is that these dudes work out all day, every day, their whole fucking lives. They're not just waking up, jacking off, banging sluts, going to the bar, and then playing basketball. They have to work really, 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 really hard every day in a way that most people could not fucking handle.
Can't even fucking imagine, can't even fathom what they've got to do to make it there. You know, on some level, like I chose to talk about my whole life because that's what I found interesting. It's kind of the only way I know how to do it. I could never do like a character.
Same.
You know, some people here have a name and an identity and they do a character and they do it well and it's awesome. And then that's great for them because people don't even know if they're married or not. People don't even know if they have kids. For me, what always resonated with me was like knowing the people I was listening to and getting to know them. And that's why I listened to them. And so I kind of went down that road. Yeah. And I regret it on some level because, you know, even if I didn't end up cheating and having my marriage fall apart, there was going to be something at some point where people didn't like me or I got canceled or whatever. And now I've given them all this ammo. And it's like, you know, people say to me, like when there was a time where I was like, I'd like to keep this private, they'd be like, no, fuck you. You always are an open book. So now you have to go through the fire. You know, you made that bed, now sleep in it. And I understand that, but I was also kind of like, you're right. I always did give you everything. So how about this one time you kind of give back? You know what I mean? How about I made the bed, so you had the bed. Like the bed wasn't even existing. There was no bed for anybody to sleep in. So how about this one time you let me sleep on the couch? You don't do the fucking bed. But I get it. It's, you know, that's the life we kind of chose. But it hurts, man. It's like and it's not just the internet. It's real life too, where it's like I think I'm a good dude and a nice person, and like I'm actually deeply loyal. and people are kind of laughing at me being, no, you're obviously not. But it's like, you know, if you knew the circumstances and you knew the situation, I think you'd think about it very differently. But I'm not going to go into that because one, it's not your business. Two, I don't want to be throwing shade at anybody. And three, it's probably not going to work. You're still going to stick to your guns and be like, no, you're still an asshole. I don't like you. So, you know,
it's happened with like when I've obviously gone through a few co-hosts on my show as well. And it's happened the same way with when I've had to let co-hosts go, where people are like, tell us every detail. And I'm like, bro, no, this is a human being who I respect. Right. Why the fuck would I air them out like that? You know, the way I think about the shit you're hitting on though with us now, it's the fucking end of 8 Mile, man. And it's when if you do this thing the way we do, it's like, this guy ain't no motherfucking MC. I know everything he's about to say against me. I am white. I am a fucking bum. I do live in a trailer with my mom. My boy Future isn't Uncle Tom. I do got a dumb friend named Cheddar Bob who shoots himself in his leg with his own gun. I did get jumped by all 6 of you chumps, and Wink did fuck my girl. I'm still standing here screaming, fuck the free world. Like, that's the way I look at my shit now. Like, I've told you everything you could possibly throw back at me, so it no longer impacts me. That's my whole fucking life. That feeling
of like invincibility on the internet a little bit is amazing. Where it's like the shit that used to bug me.
Yep.
I used to, you know, catch feelings about. Now that does not even register, dude. Because I got people taking shots over here that are, you know, a stick of dynamite blowing my shit up compared to you being like, you look like, you know, you look fat in that t-shirt. It's like, oh, good. Like, give me more of those comments because I don't, you know, that means you're not commenting about the other shit. So, you know, I'd be lying. I'd love to tell you when people tell you like they don't read the comments or it doesn't affect them or whatever, they're fucking lying. I would love to tell you that I don't even look at it anymore. But yeah, every single day that it's still that way 3.5 years later, I am interested to know, like, I would love to do some sort of study. It's like, why did this one stick so much more? And again, I always go back to the fact that she was the one who put up the Instagram post, but like, why? Maybe it's because I'm a blogger instead of just an actor. Maybe it's because you felt like you really knew me. Maybe it's the way I look or act, whatever it is. This one seems to not go away. And so it just kind of is what it is now. It's part of my life, really.
Dude, it's just one of those things though, where, I mean, we don't really get to decide what people run with, and and you almost just have to find a way to like use it to better yourself and your audience through whatever lessons you can dispel, right? Because it's like, obviously, a shitty situation. No matter how you look at it, it fucking sucks. Nobody's ever gonna know like the full story because it's none of their business. Yeah. It's just between you and your family, and that's that. This episode of RBP is also brought to you by Sunday. Spring is just around the corner, and that means it's time to get the lawn on track. And I know the last thing anybody needs is another complicated or toxic lawn product. That is not this. Sunday is more than a lawn care product. It's a customized lawn plan that works with nature. They take out all the guesswork and unwanted chemicals, so you can grow a beautiful lawn that's better for people, pets, and the planet. It's unbelievable. I have never known much about lawns. Don't know much about grass. Never been a huge lawn guy. Love King of the Hill. Always wanted to be more like Hank. And now I can be with Sunday. They give you everything you need. All you have to do is go to Sunday.com. I put in my home address. Their free lawn analysis tool took care of the rest in a matter of seconds. They use soil and climate data to create a tailored nutrient plan so that I get all the stuff my lawn needs and nothing it doesn't. It's made with ingredients that you can actually pronounce too, like seaweed, iron, and molasses, so you can grow better and feel better about it. Sunday is amazing. It's easy. All you have to do is attach the ready-to-use pouch that shows up at your front doorstep to a garden hose, and you spray it across your lawn. It takes less than 15 minutes. Lawn care used to take up your whole day. With Sunday, 10, 15 minutes, you're done. Best of all, this stuff really works. Let Sunday take the guesswork out of growing a greener, more beautiful lawn this spring. Visit getsunday.com/Ross to get $20 off your custom lawn plan at checkout today. That's $20 off your custom lawn plan at checkout when you go to getsunday.com/Ross. What's next for you? Because I've watched you go from KFC radio, from doing all your blogging to now carrying the Kevin Clancy show, crushing interviews with A-list hip-hop legends and actors and comedians, and you're dominating social media with the 1 Minute Man. What are you gonna do next? Now I'm sucking your dick.
First of all, thank you for that. It's kind words.
Yeah.
I'm almost there. Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. I got you.
I 1 Minute Man has for sure been, without a doubt, the most successful thing I've done. At Barstool, I've always been the slow and steady guy. Like KFC Radio was the first one. I grinded it out in the beginning. Hopefully I paved the way and made it easier for the next people. And it's a successful podcast. It's good. It's big. But I never had that like boom straight to the top the way that like Pardon My Take or Call Her Daddy or some of the other Barstool podcasts,
right,
or just some of the other podcasts in general have had. But 1 Minute Man kind of was like that, where this is an idea that kind of created back in like 2017, 18. Then I put on the shelf for a while. I resurrected when Instagram made some changes on their end. And that, to me, the fact I get people now like stopping me in the street, or I do these interviews and people will be like celebrities. I'm like, oh no, you're the 1 Minute Man. And that's crazy to me. Like the same thing happened to Dave, where he had a career of blogging and videos behind him. And they'd say, you're the pizza guy. And I'd be like, yeah, I'm the 1 Minute Man, but I also fucking did this and this and that. But I'm happy that that's really clicked. So honestly, I think that might be the path for me. This informational version of Barstool, like people tell me legitimately, for better or worse, probably worse. They're like, you're where I get my news from. You're the source. I'm like, yikes, that's not good. But I think the idea of I'll be the bridge between old and young, where the older people will get the information they need, use words and vocabulary and shit that they can understand. And I'll be the guy who injects some humor and some opinions into, here's what's going on the internet. So, I'd love to end up being like I'm not a comedian by any means. I'm not like it's not like you're hosting a show. I can do that, but that's not what 1 Minute Man is. It's almost like being like a Ryan Seacrest something, right? Where you're like, I'm a host of some, or like an E News
what was
anchor.
That soup? The
but
soup?
Like for the internet. Yeah, exactly. Like yes, like a Joel McHale soup type of thing, where it's like, here's all the information, here's some jokes about it. And if you watch a show, so like 1 Minute Man is a daily thing that's a few minutes long to tell you about one topic. I've actually launched a spin-off of that. That's the original idea for 1 Minute Man. And I'm calling it 10 Topics, 10 Minutes. The first iteration of 1 Minute Man was a podcast segment where my brother would throw a topic on the clock for 1 minute, and you do, 10 topics, 10 minutes. You're the 1 Minute Man.
Got you.
And I inevitably would go over time, and I would take way longer than 60 seconds. This time around, I've only been doing it for two weeks, so we'll see. It's 10 topics, 10 minutes, with the idea that you watch this YouTube video and you will know everything from the past week you got to know about when you walk into happy hour, when you go on a date, when you're at, a dinner party, and you're just like, I know about that. And here's an opinion, and here's a joke, and here's a take, because I just laid it all out to you in an easy way. So that sort of, I'm educating you. I'm educating the world, Ross. That's what's next for me.
You're an educator, but it's all it's like the relevant pop culture and like the stuff that like you would get a clickbaity, shitty version of through a lot of outlets in a fun and funny way is the way I see.
Trying to do it for real. Yeah. Yep.
And also
you know what I just did today? I'm interested to get your take. Steve Merkel dropped his strain of weed. I'm sure you're going to be all over that.
I will
be. The article.
I will be, of course. Steve Urkel. Did I do that? He did.
So let me ask you that. What would be I gave up other 90s TV characters that should have their own strain of weed. What would yours be?
Oh, God. A 90s TV character that deserves their own strain of weed.
It could be. Do you want like maybe there's a Thrones character, maybe there's a Sopranos character?
I'm trying to think of what the fuck I was watching in the 90s. If somebody on The Sopranos deserves a strain of weed, it's probably Christopher Moltisanti. I would like the Christopher Moltisanti strain, please.
And what would that? What kind of high would the Christopher Moltisanti strain be?
Disorienting.
There you go. Exactly.
You wouldn't have a fucking clue what was going on the second you smoked it, which is what I want. I want to lose all attachment to reality. One of the funniest things for me about 1 Minute Man is watching you, and really one of the funniest things about Barstool in general and Dave's. I don't even know if I would say it was a pivot. His strategic insertion into the TikTok world is what I would call it. You explaining the TikTok shit is the best, because I've finally hit a point in my life where I'm old enough that there is a thing that the younger people have that makes just no sense to me.
it's a hard realization, right?
It is.
The first time that there's been several moments for me. The first time I didn't know like the cool new hip hop song.
Right.
But I was like, oh my God, I don't even know who, like, I couldn't tell you who Pooh Shiesty is at all. You know, I used to be up on all my rap.
Yep.
So that was tough for me. And then the social media world, like when I first opened up Snapchat and there were no like words on the screen, like you just had to know what each like icon meant. I was like, I don't know what any of these little pictures are. I can't even fucking do this. And then the TikTok, man, I respect the fuck out of these kids. Some of them I don't respect. Some of them I'm like, you know, what I don't get, two things that are funny to me. First of all, the haters will be like, who cares? Why are you talking about these guys, right? And then the next day, there's this story about the Lakers catfish. And they're like, I need the breakdown, man. Like, so you're telling me you give a fuck about these loser nobodies out in LA pretending to be female cancer patient podcasters, but you don't care about you don't care about Jake Paul, who has made waves enough to sell 75 million pay-per-views and fight, you know, like that's why, how are you telling me you don't care? One thing's not worthy to talk about and the other is. That cracks me up.
This shit's bizarre.
And the other thing that cracks me up is they are us. They're Barstool. Like, you care about my marriage. You care about the gossip at Barstool because that's who you grew up with and that's who you watched. How can you not take a step out of your own shoes and be like, oh, so that guy is the El Prez of TikTok and that guy is the KFC of TikTok, but they just, who cares? It's like, well, like the 100 million people that follow them care.
Yeah, people don't have a good enough understanding or respect for like, look, every generation is going to one up this thing where the level of fame that like you had to deal with or Portnoy had to deal with when you were younger, or like that any of these reality TV stars had to deal with when they were 18, like 10 years ago, versus like on TikTok now, like where these dudes, like you just said, you're building a 100 million person audience at like the age of 15 years old. Different ball game, bro. Like not the same as it was for us.
And you don't have to like it. You got to respect it though. And like, and I did reach a breaking point like a couple weeks ago.
I saw
where it
this.
was like, yeah, the one guy, when that girl said, I found out that Jaden likes Nessa. And I was like, bro, we sound like we're actually at recess in 7th grade, like passing notes. Like, do you like me? Check yes or no. Except these kids are millionaires. Like that to me was too much.
Yeah.
And God bless him. Portnoy has said it best. He said, listen, when those kids turn 21 and I now have a whole new, army of gamblers, like I played you, right? But I'm like, yeah, but you're also going to dinner with them on a Monday night and hanging out with them. So, like there's a difference, bro. There's a difference.
Yeah. The promo clip for Call Me Daddy of her saying that made me vomit into my own lap. And then Portnoy's video of him out to dinner with that kid was one of the more, because it was one of those moments. I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out like the side of Portnoy that's Portnoy and the side of him that's the character, right? Because I've met dude in real life at the Masters in 2017, and I just know this game. And like you said, there are people who are doing characters and there are people who are themselves, and he's a very blurred version of it where sometimes I can't fucking tell.
It's all.
Yeah. So him being out to dinner with like
he kind of went. You know what's actually funny about him? Sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
He went from his character he went from El Prez to Dave Portnoy. Usually, you kind of like become a different person. Him becoming himself on the internet was him turning into this like $100 million, I hang out in Miami and hang out with the teenagers thing. But like, yeah, it was kind of like when Walter White went full Heisenberg. Like, oh yeah, there's nothing left. There's no more. The family man, the blogger guy who used to hang out with us. Like, nah, that's gone, bro. It's over.
That guy's dead and gone. This is what you got left. Kevin, thank you again for taking the time today. Part 2 of our 7-part interview series on KFC Barstool coming late 2021. Will you throw us everywhere you want us to follow? I've already said KFC Radio, The Kevin Clancy Show, 1 Minute Man on Instagram and TikTok, but all your other handles, please, sir.
I will say this too. Next time we do part 2, 3 through 7, you were on my show. We introduced and we explained who you were and your story. I've done the same now. Next time,
we do jokes
from here on out, we talk about shit and not just ourselves and what's going on, because everybody knows who we are now, tag team champions of the world.
Yes.
So now we can get into the good shit.
Looking forward to doing jokes together.
I actually will. I'll take the plug seriously this time. Usually I'm like, don't worry about it.
No, please do.
I am desperate. I am desperate, Ross, to grow my YouTube.
I see this on Twitter.
It's the one thing. When I started the podcast in 2012, I could have had 10 years of podcast growth, but the powers that be at Barstool told me you can't promote the YouTube. You got to grow the audio. You got to use our in-house video players, which I respect. You got to pay the bills and shit.
Sure.
But man, when I think about how powerful YouTube is now, and I could have had a decade of growing those subscribers, that would have been nice. And for whatever reason, our audience doesn't seem to gravitate towards YouTube. So when I tell them to go subscribe, these motherfuckers just don't listen. So maybe the Ross Bolen and Bolen Media crowd will throw me a bone. So if you could subscribe to KFC Radio on YouTube and subscribe to Kevin Clancy on YouTube, I would be eternally grateful.
Get on there, subscribe to KFC Radio and the Kevin Clancy Show on YouTube. Follow Kevin everywhere, Twitter, Instagram, and keep an eye on him. Keep an eye on this guy. Hey, thank you again, man. We'll talk soon. You, that will do it for today's show. Thank you so much again to Kevin Clancy for joining us. Make sure y'all follow him everywhere. Support Kevin and his different shows, KFC Radio, the Kevin Clancy Show. He's been a cool dude to watch go through a lot of shit online over, like I said, about a decade that I've been watching him now. And kind of a nice role model in a way for me in some instances to learn how to handle certain things. He's also been incredibly cool to take the time to interview me on his show and to come on our show and to be a responsive sort of mentor to me through text message and email whenever I have questions, as he is obviously a couple steps larger than I am at this point. Kevin's a good dude, been through a lot of shit and had to eat a lot of shit as a result of his career, but genuinely believe he is a good dude and really, really enjoyed his time today. So y'all make sure you go support him. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Hope those of you who were brought here by Barstool liked my questions, liked what you heard, and we'll go check out like Monday's episode to hear us talk about OnlyFans or listen to last week's episodes. My co-host, who's usually here with me, is named Jared Borslow. He's awesome, and he will be back with me on Friday on patreon.com/Ross Bolen podcast for an ad-free exclusive edition of the show that comes out only on Patreon on Fridays. Go now to patreon.com/Ross Bolen podcast to make sure that this Friday's episode is available to you. And guess what? Right when you sign up, you get our whole backlog of all the ad-free exclusive episodes that have dropped the last God knows how many Fridays. Patreon.com/Ross Bolen podcast. Have a great rest of your week. We'll be back Friday on Patreon. We'll be back Monday right here on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Every Monday and Wednesday right here. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Until next time, remember, you are not alone. Peace be with you. And also with you.